Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy, and this is Hamlet Act 3 summary, background, and interpretation. So, what happened in Act 3? In scene 1, the king tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern what's up with Hamlet. Something's going on. Find out. He wants Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to find out. Ophelia sits while Polonius and the king watch Hamlet's interactions with her. If you recall, she's on the side reading a book. Hamlet is famous to be or not to be speech takes place. And all three are actually listening to that. Hamlet and Ophelia then interact. He tells her, "Get thee to a nunnery." She's distraught. King and Polonius re-enter. King says he's sending Hamlet to England. Polonius says it's neglected love that's driving Hamlet mad. So Polonius changes his mind from actually saying that he's just nuts until to realizing that he loves Ophelia, and he told Ophelia not to love him back, not to etc. Anyway, scene 2. Players are given instructions from Hamlet. These are the players where, if you recall, he's going to catch the conscience of the king, and the king and the group come in. They play. First, it's a dumb show. There's lots of talk about what's going on. And then the play, Gonzango, pours poison into the sleeper's ear. The king rises and leaves suddenly. He recognizes himself in the player's play. So the king does, in fact, see himself. Horatio saw the king's interactions too, because Hamlet told him, make sure you keep an eye on this guy. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern re-enter and tell Hamlet that his mother wants to see him. They probe Hamlet. Polonius re-enters and tells Hamlet that his mother wants to see him. So they're driving him to his mom, and Hamlet speaks. In scene 3, the king and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he's sending Hamlet to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern with some sealed orders. Polonius tells the king that Hamlet's going to go see his mother and that he'll listen, and then he'll report back to the king. And the king alone confesses the truth of his offense. He actually is kneeling down, and you hear a little soliloquy, a little, monologue of the king, Claudius confessing. And Hamlet sees the king, right, praying, and has the chance to kill him, but he doesn't. And you know why he doesn't, right? Because he doesn't want him to go to heaven while he's praying when he kills him. In scene 4, the queen and Polonius are in the scene, and Polonius hides when Hamlet comes in, and Hamlet says, I will set you up a glass where you may see the inmost part of you. And then she screams, Polonius screams, Hamlet stabs the curtain and kills Polonius. So it's a fatal error, actually. As you know, if you finish the play with me, he finds out it is Polonius and rips apart his mother with words. It's an amazing takedown of his mom until the ghost shows up and to try to help his wife and says, don't, it's not her you're after, it's my brother. So Hamlet has some more words with his mother, and then he drags Polonius's body away. In scene 5, the Queen Rosencrantz, she tells the king what Hamlet did, and then the king tells Rosencrantz what Hamlet did, and then they should go and get the body. Go get that body. Find Polonius. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern go to and Hamlet. There was some word fencing, but there they are. They can't. Hamlet's not going to tell them where the body is. There's some funny lines in there. Scene 7, King and Rosencrantz says he can't find the body. Guildenstern brings Hamlet in, and Hamlet tells the king where the body is. So the king says he's going to send him away to England. Keeps saying that, and he finally does it. And he has secret letters, and in those letters are to kill Hamlet when he arrives in England. That's a lot that happened in Act 3 as the plot moved along. We saw in Act 2 that he's going to catch the conscience of the king. And then in Act 3, the play does take place. He does catch the king, proves to himself that the ghost, in fact, was really his father and not a demon. And now he's really got to revenge his dad. So he goes to see his mother, but he kills Polonius. hiding behind a curtain. Hamlet did think it was the king. Who else would be in the mother's room? And then the king decides to send Hamlet to England and execute him. So if we were to outline the three acts so far, just think about the three acts for a moment. Pardon me. So in Act 1, you got a ghost that tells Hamlet what happened to him, to the ghost. In Act 2, Hamlet prepares a plan to verify if the ghost is telling him the truth. In Act 3, Hamlet verifies the truth of what the ghost said and begins the actions, but kills Polonius by mistake. See, the ghost is actually a central character in here. We're going to talk about the ghost throughout. And then what I wanted you to do is take a look at the word count of the acts, because remember, plot moves it along. Aristotle said what plot should do is make it not too long, not too short, but just right. Pardon me. So there's a lot to digest. In Act 1, there's 7,000 words. In Act 2, 6,000. Act 3, which is the longest act, right? 7,600 words, 5,400 words, 5,900 words. You'll see these in Act 4 and 5. But the question still remains. Is Hamlet acting mad? Or, is he just acting, or is he mad? What do you think? You've had a chance now to see this guy in action for three acts. He's certainly, when he kills Polonius, that looks like a madman, right? But then again, if you think about it, who else would be behind the curtain in his mom's room? And given the chance to kill his uncle and revenge his father, when he saw him praying, he rationalized himself out of it. What do you make of that? Pardon me. So the ghost is at the heart of this play. Not many people think about this, but I want you to think about this, the root cause. Root causes are when you're examining a product failure, for example, you look for root causes of what caused it. The ghost is the root cause. Without the ghost, none of this would have happened. So just imagine for a moment the first three acts, the ghost never shows up, and Hamlet is just sad that his father died and that his mother married his father. Without the ghost, he would never really know what really, really happened. So the ghost puts in motion this entire play. When he appears to the people, the soldiers and Horatio and his friends, and they bring Hamlet to listen to him. And so there's not just the advancement of the plot, but the ghost is really the cause, the root cause of the rest of the play. Without that ghost, this would be a very different story. Don't you agree with me? So, and now he's a real character because three people heard him, plus Hamlet, right? The soldiers heard him. They saw him, certainly. Some of them heard him, but Hamlet did talk to the ghost. So none of this subjective stuff where you saw in some of the notes that this is a figment of his mind, especially when he was talking to his mother. The editor of the edition that we're reading called it a subjective ghost. It's no such thing. This ghost is a real character in this story. Now, whether you believe in ghosts or not, that's your prerogative. But in this story, if this is going to make sense to you and you're going to learn something from it, you have to believe that that ghost is a real character. So one of the key scenes in Act 3, Scene 4, is where the ghost shows up again, and this time only Hamlet sees him. And the ghost, think about this, cautions him. Do not forget, this visitation is but to whet thy almost blunted purpose. See that? The almost blunted purpose. What's his purpose? Revenge. The ghost set him on a course of revenge. And the ghost is telling him as he's reaming out his mouth, don't blunt your purpose, but look, amazement on thy mother sits. When he's talking to his mother so harshly, he's really destroying he's just hammering her. And the ghost is telling him, your mother, is amazed. So step between her and her fighting soul. Don't torture her. Conceit and weakness, body's strongest works. Conceit and weakness, body's strongest works. When you have, conceit is the strongest word. Conceit. Speak to her. And that's the last we see of the ghost for the rest of the play. He put it in motion, appears once more to stop Hamlet from reaming on his mom, and that's it. So some people think the ghost is a figment of his imagination, but he's not. He's a real character. Don't forget that. Otherwise, the play doesn't make sense. Okay, got it? Therefore, you have to consider the ghost real. But we also see the character of the king developing into a really bad guy. He's going to arrange to have his nephew killed when he goes to England. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern carry these sealed orders. So this guy who killed Hamlet's dad, I'm going to pause for a moment. So I was mentioning, sorry about the pause, the sealed orders. And poor Polonius, notice Hamlet's reaction when he kills him, that he thinks that this may have been the king. Now, that's totally logical. So you're still evaluating whether Hamlet is really mad or not, or seeming to be mad. So it becomes obvious that the queen doesn't know what her new husband did to her old husband, regardless of what Hamlet tells her in her speech. She may realize when she keeps telling him, speak no more, please stop. But probably she didn't realize anything about the truth that Hamlet's uncle killed his father, her husband. So in many ways, pardon me, this is a story about truth and what you do when you know the truth. Remember, the ghost is the root cause of this whole episode, right? That he's the one who put it in motion. And if you're going to believe the story, that he's telling Hamlet the truth, Hamlet at first says, well, maybe he's not. Maybe he's the demon. But in any case, as I was saying, in any case, the ghost tells the truth. He verifies it by the play. The king sees himself, runs away, and Hamlet is convinced that the ghost is in fact his dad. So there's also the saying you're going to hear about truth. Would have, should have, could have. This is important in understanding. What are you talking about, Jimmy? Well, there's a would have, I should have done that, I would have done that, I could have done that, but what did I do? So woulda, coulda, shoulda. I forgot. I picked that up from a client once, and I never really forgot it. So if you are thinking about anything you could have done, or you should have done, or you would have done, which one would you do? Should Hamlet have killed his uncle when he had the chance? These are important questions. And the fact that he doesn't, but you're also allowed to see why he doesn't, is a revelation into his character, right? You remember Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. I think I talk about that in a minute. But you can't handle the truth. What is the truth? We're going to talk about this. So we'll find out when we finish the play the answer to the question, should Polonius have concluded Hamlet's madness was because of his daughter? Because that's what he concluded. He figured Hamlet is wacko because of unrequited love. The king in the upcoming scene, Act 4, says this. This is if you haven't read Act 4 yet and the analysis, this is what's going to happen in Act 4. I'm going to give you the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Time qualifies the spark and fire of it. There lives within the very flame of love a kind of wick or snuff that will abate it. Now he's talking about love, the king, believe it or not. And nothing is as it like goodness still, for goodness, growing to a pleurisy, dies in its own too much. that we would do, why we should do, that we would do, we should do when we would. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. For this would, I would do, changes, and hath abatements and delays as many as there are tongues. Our hands, our accidents, and then this should is like a spendthrift sigh that hurts by easing. But to the quick of the ulcer, Hamlet comes back. What would you undertake to show yourself your father's son, indeed more than words? So the king in the coming act says these things. He's thinking about like love does, it's like a wick and it burns itself out. I don't know, see if that's true. Remember, when these characters are speaking, they're also revealing the reliability of their narration. There's only one, this is third person narration, meaning the third person narrator is showing us the dialogue of these people on a stage, right? You're watching a stage and you have to learn about them through what they do and what they say. So if the king says, this is like, love is like a wick, kind of wick or snuff that will abate it. In other words, it could die out. Is that true? Is it? We might also say that the root cause of what happens is the king himself for committing the murder of his brother. If he didn't do that, there would be no play. Well, there might be a play, but it would be a very different play than the ghost showing up and telling Hamlet the truth, right? So in all great literature, for every action, there is in fact a reaction. And what we are witnessing is a series of actions that lead to, so far, the deaths of Hamlet's father and Polonius. So here's the reference to Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. What is the truth? If you look at the dictionary, when it tells us the truth, it's a quality or state. Quality or state of being true. Okay, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Quality or state of being true. That's these definitions are really strange, aren't they? When a definition gives you back the word that you're trying to define, but then again, if you read Alan Watts, I think I referred to him in the last analysis, he says words they don't really mean much, and yet he wrote a lot of books with a lot of words. In any case, or that which is true is in accordance with fact and reality. Okay, so that the quote should be right here. That which is true is with accordance, but then what is reality? Then what is reality? We were at an art show last night, and artists were there talking about their works, and there was a young lady from Arizona showing, just a beautiful still life that she had painted, and she works at a major bank as a risk manager and does art, her passion on her side, which is, you got to follow your passion. In any case, she brought up the topic, of what the colors she uses, what's inspired her. Her grandma inspired her to paint these flowers. And then we started talking about color blindness, the senses. And I said, what is, reality came into the picture. And I said, what is reality? And she paused and smiled and she said, that's a good question, isn't it? Going further, Google tells us you determine the truth, right? Because if truth means it's a fact or reality, what is reality? I don't want to get too deep into this, but if you determine the truth by first-hand observation, determines the truth or falsity of a given statement. See this? That's what Google says further by determining the truth. So the ghost was real as seen in Act 1. That we remember, when you're analyzing a story, you're staying inside the story. Don't go outside the story. You can bring in your experiences if you'd like to, just like I did with the artist girl when we're discussing the truth. But as far as the story is concerned, the ghost, is real. So here's another point of view. All right, before we go on to character. These guys have atomic clocks, and they make an agreement to actually shoot rockets off, right, at 12 o'clock, 12 noon. They're going to shoot these rockets off. The distance between this guy and this guy, even though this is a picture of it over here, this is 600 miles. This is 600, about 600 miles. This is about 600 miles. So the midpoint is right here. And they have these atomic watches on. And so they shake hands and they say, okay, we're going to shoot our rockets off at exactly 12 o'clock. Exactly 12 o'clock. And we got our atomic watches to tell. Okay, so they split up. They go to he goes 600 miles this way, 600 miles that way. And then they put a judge here. They put a little, guy to make sure that they do what they say they're going to do. They make an agreement. They sign a contract. And they go away. 12 o'clock noon comes and with their atomic clocks, and boom, they set off their rockets. And they're all happy. And so they each drives 600 miles. The judge comes. They sit at a bar and they start talking. And they say, this is great. We shot our rockets. We're all happy. And then this guy says to this guy, says, yeah, but you didn't do it at 12 o'clock. And this guy says, what do you mean I didn't do it? I did it. I got an atomic watch. It said 12 o'clock and I shot it. No. You missed it by 2 seconds. Or let's say 4 seconds, 600 miles, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. So they start arguing. And he said, no, you missed it by 4 seconds. No, you missed it by 4 seconds, right? No, you missed it by 8 seconds, 8 seconds. This guy says, wait, ho. You guys both missed it by about 5 seconds. So they kill each other. It's a tragic story. Who's right? What is the truth? What is the truth in this scenario? Who? Because, truth is the right? Is there such a thing as a truth? Well, the truth is, if you know the speed of sound travels 600, a second or whatever it does. So you have to know the distance in order to calculate that this guy with his atomic watch was right, this guy with his atomic watch was right, and this guy with his atomic watch was right. They were all right. Another example is the light travels at 186,000 miles a second, so it takes around 16 seconds for the sunlight to reach the Earth. So if the sun were to theoretically blow up, you won't know it for 16 seconds. Not that it matters, because if the sun blows up, we're done. So when you think about the truth, I want you to think about what in fact is true. First-hand observation determines the truth. Or you trust people. You trust someone telling you to be telling you the truth. It's called in literature the reliability of the narrator. The king never tells the truth, does he? The ghost does, but his brother who killed him never tells the truth, ever. You'll see that in the next few acts. So character is the second most important thing in Aristotle, correct? And what you want to do when you're thinking about Aristotle doing the analysis of character is that we learn in Act 3 more about each character. Can you summarize what you learned? Let's summarize very quickly. Claudius, like all parents, wants to protect his children. In Act 2, he sends his kid money. In Act 3, he gets killed trying to prove his theory that Hamlet is going crazy because of the love of his daughter. Claudius, if you believe the ghost, wanted power. In Act 2, he knows he's sensing something about Hamlet, that Hamlet might be wise to him. And then in Act 3, he actually figures out that Hamlet, he knows what he did. Somehow Hamlet knows that he killed his father. So he plans to have Hamlet executed when he reaches England. So, as I said, this guy's character is just a bad man. He's a bad man. Pardon me, we didn't know much about Gertrude yet, and in Act 2, pardon me, we still don't discover that. But in Act 3, we probably find out she's innocent. In other words, she doesn't know, well, she's unaware that her new husband killed her old husband. Especially, we know this in the encounter with Hamlet. And Hamlet, being sad after he lost his dad, he sets a trap in Act 3. He springs the trap, and yet he hesitates to kill Claudius. So a lot of people think that this play is about, Hamlet basically cannot make a decision. It's about a play, Jimmy, where a guy can't make a decision. Well, yes and no. He can't make a decision, but there's reasons why he doesn't make a decision. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Remember? He should have killed Claudius when he saw him praying. If he would have done that, none of the other stuff would have happened. Do you understand? He would, even that he does that. He sees that happening right before he visits with his mom. So you can theorize all you want, but staying within the boundaries of the play, we can analyze it and say he doesn't kill Claudius because he's really bent on revenge and he doesn't want to kill him while he's praying, and he goes to heaven. He makes a serious mistake, an error in judgment, when he kills Polonius, and that helps you understand whether he's mad or not. There's no reason for him to believe that it was Polonius back there. Who else would be in his mother's chambers, right? Except the king. In fact, when he kills him, he calls him a rat, and he stabs the curtain, right? So Ophelia was being paid attention. She reacts to Hamlet in Act 3 when he tells her to go to a nunnery. She's just distraught. So just a couple of things on language in this act, which is the longest act of the play. So some of the language, Hamlet says, "Give me that man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core, I in my heart of heart, as I do thee." He's talking to his friend Horatio. What a great way to say he's my friend, rather than saying, who's Horatio? He's my friend. Give me the man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core, I in my heart of heart, as I do thee. I told you earlier when we started Shakespeare, no one talks like this. And that's a sad thing. Because if people talk like this, can you imagine that? Do you have any friends like that? Give me that man that is not... Well, Jimmy, they're talking about men, and there's also women. And of course there are. But friendship is friendship, whether it's a man and a man, man and a woman, woman and a woman. It doesn't matter. It's a friend. And he's saying that he will passion slave. What does that mean? You're not passion slave. Nietzsche said once, give me the friend and his overflowing heart. That's really what a friend is. He's always ready to give, help people. His overflowing heart. I'll find the quote for you. Hamlet. So another one. Madam, how did you like the play? The lady protests too much, methinks. Protesting too much is an interesting thing. It actually comes up in other writing of Shakespeare, but the lady protests too much. She's watching the lady on the stage of the play within the play. Methink thou protest too much. She thinks the lady protests too much. When you protest too much, what is that a sign of if you're protesting too much? Maybe the truth. I don't know. And then, of course, we have that very, very, very famous speech by Hamlet while Ophelia, the king, and Polonius are watching in the distance, the to be or not to be speech. This is one that you should really read and reread and think about. Jimmy thinks. Because this is really he wrote, when he used to write papers in college, about existentialism, this is one of the examples he used about existentialism. Existentialism, of course, is the world's absurd, so I must kill myself, but I don't kill myself because of rolling the rock or experiencing is much more important than getting to the top, basically. Camus, Sartre, people like that were around. Existentialism goes back, way, way back, including here. So to be or not to be, that is the question. That's the central question, actually, of who you are, why you're here, what you want to do. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. In other words, you're going to suffer from fortune, fate, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, or to fight. And by opposing them, and by opposing and to die, to sleep no more. And by a sleep, to say that we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that the flesh is heir to. It's a consummation, devoutly to be wished. You see, this is a very potent speech about a guy who's suffering inside, you know, from seeing what he saw, and now he knows what happened, and he's got to do something about it. To die, sleep, you see, to die, to sleep. See the repetition here? When you sleep, what do you do when you sleep? You go unconscious, right? You dream. It's not reality, but you dream. So in a way, every time we go to sleep, we kind of die, don't we? To sleep, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Ah, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil. Everybody contemplates what happens after you die. No, not everybody, perhaps, but most people do. I have a former associate that used to say, cycle of life. When any, I used to love to go to funerals. Loved it. Just loved it. I don't know why. I don't know why. But he loved to read the obituaries. It was just an interesting fellow. But when you go to sleep, you kind of die, right? And when you do die, no one really has come back and said this is really what happens, unless you really had a vision or whatever. And Jimmy has no vision. I told you during this reading of Hamlet, Jimmy did see a fisherman, which was I'm going to just tell you, okay? But in any case, we don't know what will happen when we shuffle off this mortal coil. Must give us pause. We have to we should think about this, right? He's saying must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's constantly the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, all these things, the insolence of office, and the spurns the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make, with bare Botkin, who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that he dread of something after death. Who would put up with all this stuff? Unless you thought that the dread of something after death, something worse was going to happen to you, right? About what is a bodkin? I gave you a note here when we read it. So I'm not going to finish this. You can finish it at your leisure. But this is maybe I should finish it. No, that's all right. Conscience makes us cowards of us all. This is conscience does make cowards of us all. Conscience. You'll see later Laertes pauses when he's fencing with Hamlet. So your conscience, do people have a conscience these days? What is a conscience? A conscience means there's consequences for your actions. If you feel there will be no consequences to your actions, I think your conscience kind of evaporates, right? Some people, and this is important too to think about and talk about with your associates, with your friends, whatever. Are you born with good and evil in your mind, or are you just born and you learn this? I know in my experience and Jimmy's experience, there's a lot of people who believe you're born with this. I know one guy who wrote a book about this in ethics that actually says you're born with the knowledge of good and evil. And I have a very, very smart person that I know that believes that we have this inherent thing when we're born within us that tells us this is right and this is wrong. Jimmy doesn't believe that necessarily. Jimmy thinks that learning the difference between right, wrong, good, bad, the theory of opposites is really what happens as you grow up. And this is something that we want to talk about or think about, especially in this play, because it's obvious to me, anyway, in reading it, that Claudius has no conscience. I mean, even in that scene in this act 3, where he's praying about his offense and all that stuff, that doesn't preclude the fact that he did it. He killed his brother. Now, is killing right or wrong? Well, Jimmy and war, they kill a lot, all that. You can argue whichever way you want to argue, right? But to take a human life is either going to be right or wrong. And who are we to judge anybody who does that, right? Except we can, because if you believe that it's okay to kill someone, then if someone comes along and kills you, you got to shut up. Of course, you'll be dead, right? Thinking about ethics, about morality, about conscience, Hamlet, the reason why he hesitated, he can't make up his mind. Why can't he make up his mind? He's got a conscience. He has a conscience. And yet you will notice what happens when he goes to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Look what happened when he was with Polonius. He didn't hesitate. He stabbed that curtain. He didn't hesitate. He stabbed the curtain because he's governed by passion as well. You see this. You'll see it in the outbreaks of him. He has that was a passionate stab of that curtain. He stabbed it because he thought it was the king. It turned out to be Polonius. He was sorry, but then what does he do? He hides the body. Interesting, isn't it? Any case. Okay, couple more. These are some of the notes that the subjective goes. I want you to be aware of adjectives. Copywriters in advertising are very famous users of adjectives. They love adjectives, right? I was a copywriter. I love adjectives. But if you're going to understand anything, you got to be careful of adjectives. You have to be very, very careful of adjectives because they modify nouns. And there's some theories out there that say, well, words are meaningless anyway because they're representations they're not reality. They represent reality. Of course they do. But otherwise, how are you going to communicate about reality without words? How do you communicate reality without words? You just don't communicate, right? Oh, what, Jimmy, can't you smile? You can smile, but if you smile and you don't say anything and you're smiling, people will think you're a little nuts. No, I'm kidding. So be careful of adjectives and be careful of if you're after the truth. Now, it took a lot for Jimmy to challenge this editor guy, right? He's an academic, and he can argue this point of view. I can argue the point of view, except I can't. In this case, this is not a subjective ghost. It's the ghost. Now it's a subjective ghost. I'm saying it's a subjective ghost. Well, you can say that, but the reality of Hamlet is that it's not subjective. It's a real ghost. Otherwise, the story doesn't make sense. One of the reasons you study literature is because there is rarely such certainty in life with people. People are very complex, and you rarely know what is the truth about a person's actions. You just don't. It's hard to say. It's hard to say of anything. Why is Jimmy doing this? Why is Jimmy reading these classics? I can tell you why. Because I think people need to understand these books, these stories, to lead better lives. That's why I'm doing it. I firmly believe that because it has helped me. They have helped me understand my own self, which is probably the hardest thing to do. Anyway, this is the interpretation of Act 3 of Hamlet. We're reading Hamlet. You're reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Thanks so much. Look forward to the next couple of acts.